Hello everyone, it is Christine here, and I'm excited to announce that I have finished my Roxy Journal of Stitchery Down the Garden Path pieces for volume 3. So before I start, I just want to say a big thank you to Sarah and to Rachel and to Juju, who are the organisers of this fantastic collaboration. Just really appreciate all the time that you put into the project and the amazing community that you've created around you. And I want to thank all of the other people that have been stitching along as part of the project and for the inspiration you have provided to all of us, and just the lovely, encouraging and collegiate environment that we have in the Facebook group, and also the others who share videos on YouTube and the people who watch those videos. So a big thank you to you. I think that's what's made this project just so very enjoyable, and I've met some amazing people through the process of doing this project. When I say meet, I mean online, but yeah, just made some lovely stitchy friends through the process. So let's get stuck in and have a look. So I've got 2 wall hangings, so I went with a larger format than the smaller snippet roll, and I was creating pieces which I always knew I would bring together some way, but until the end, I didn't know what that was going to be. But as I started to lay them out, I decided that I had a nice little sort of story that could flow across two panels, and could have a sort of, one would be a darker, more muted tones, and then the other would be more lighter and brighter tones. So I really love in my work to have quite a bit of variation. And you'll be able to see that in the panels. I like to play, I like to experiment. So yeah, if you're watching my videos, you'll just see a lot of variety. I don't kind of get stuck in one way of doing things. I just like to try and play, and I love encouraging other people to do that as well. So let's have a look. So one of the things I was contemplating in my most recent videos was about how I would do the title for the piece. So I was working on my title as part of the final prompt, which was sort of choose your own adventure. And I'd created these little hexagons, which I'd done stitching of what I wanted the title of my piece to be, which is Down the Garden Path of My Mind's Eye, because it's all about my imagination of gardens in different parts of the world, and the creatures that live in gardens. So what I ended up doing was lining up my hexagons so that when the 2 panels are hanging on the doors in my craft room, which is where they will be, you can kind of read one title and then read the next, but they will appear as a cohesive set of wall hangings rather than appearing as 2 totally separate wall hangings. So I've got Down the Garden Path of My Mind's Eye. So let's start by taking a look at the first of the panels. So if you've been watching my video, you will have seen the creation of most of this, even the sort of before I stitched down all the background pieces. I shared a video on that as well. So what I've done up the top is just put in place a hollow metal tube that's the perfect length. That will have a piece, or it does have a piece of rope through that will then be used to attach over and onto a hook at the back of the door and suspend it like a hung painting, I guess. And then I've just stitched the material over. I'd left a flap that comes over the back, so the design continues over that folded point. So up the very top, I've got that beautiful little rabbit character that was a feature in one of the fabrics that I had used further down the piece. But I hadn't used the rabbit at that time, but I really wanted to include her, so I added her towards the end, and so she's another visitor to my garden. And I just love that she's got her little light on. She's looking out on this darker garden scene, which starts the top of this panel. And yeah, she's got a nice then reference further down the piece. So I've sometimes done that, sort of intermingled bits of fabrics that might have been used in one of my panels into then the broader backing pieces of fabric. So all my panels are down the middle, but then they're spaced out, and either side of them and around them are other fabrics that I love from my collection that I'm just now thrilled to have a home for as well. So we've got the header piece, And so this is the sort of the night garden. And what you're going to see now is the first prompt that we got, which was the wildflowers. And I decided to create something a bit different, which is my moonlit wildflower garden. So if you have a look up the very top, I've got my moon, I've got my mountains, I've got a lake, and then we come down into this garden where you're getting little bursts of colour from the flowers. You've got beaded vintage pieces. I've created a path, and you probably can't see it, but you might be able to. It sort of reflects, it's got a reflective pattern in it that looks like sort of pavers. I've got my grass, which is just a fringed edge on a piece of fabric. And then I just did a lot of fabric collage to create this and just raw edge applique with heaps of little stitches all over the edges. So it's very, very cohesive. It almost looks like, some people commented, it looks like I've created my own fabrics. And then coming further down, I've got coming from the moonlit garden, as you come across the path, it's starting to get lighter and we're going into the daylit garden. So I didn't want to do an entire piece that was all moonlit. I wanted to have that change and really sort of bringing the viewer down. So with this piece, I then merged it when we later got a prompt of garden visitors. And so these cats, and you'll see some more cats further down, are my garden visitors. And so I then graduated using this piece, but then this is actually another piece of fabric that I've just merged and melded in. And there's beading and stitching and so many French knots. There's bullion knots to create the sunflowers. So there's lots of detail in there, which is hard to show when I'm trying to show the whole panel, but you can look back at the videos I've shared if you want to look at particular sections. And then across the background, I've added sort of where I've got joins between the fabrics. I've just added additional elements to kind of merge as the eye flows down. And what I've tried to do is pick up the colours or the tones from the pieces and then match them in the pieces that are around them. And also trying to match like where I've got roses, and other flowers. And then there's another visitor to the garden, this beautiful, very vintage piece of lace work. So let me take it a bit further up so you can see all the cats. So I had such a lovely time. These are all painted really intensely with thread. Even the seat is painted with thread. And then I had a beautiful time playing with ribbon embroidery. So many beads everywhere, more French knots, little ribbon embroidery flowers, a little rosette from ribbon embroidery, and then just, painting with thread on the flowers. So that was a lot of fun. And then when we had the prompt of a birdhouse, I happened to have this beautiful fabric and I was just putting the panels together actually to take on holidays with me to do all the stitching down while I was away. And so I decided to add this fabric in. Down the track I can always go back and add further stitching embellishments, but at this stage I'll just leave it as is. And then for the final prompt we got, which was choose your own adventure, and so I did the heading, but I can't remember if it was Rachel or Sarah, but they mentioned that they were originally planning to have the prompt of picnic. And I'd been really wanting to do a picnic prompt, so I decided to do that one as well. And I just had this beautiful piece of stitching that I wanted to add into the piece. It's just absolutely darling. So yeah, just love this little scene here. It is such a happy scene. Love the cats. I do love my dogs, but just love these thread painted cats. So let's keep moving down. So again, as I transitioned from pieces, I tried to find fabrics that had the colours from above and then the colours of the next piece. So it was really fun, just playing with colour and getting things to work together. And trying to have a mix, like sometimes having pieces of fabric that went all the way across and then sometimes having different fabrics on either side. So we then come down into another prompt no, in fact, actually, I'm remembering this one was actually garden bench, but then it ended up having other visitors to the garden. And then this one was the visitors to the garden prompt, where I created a garden behind a hedge with holes in the hedge where we're looking through to the rabbits. And this is a 3-dimensional hedge with little rosettes with beads in the middle of them. And then there's little beaded, and then these rabbits are also painted with thread. You've got Peter Rabbit with his blue jacket, and that's all. It's almost made to look like a knitted jacket just through the way that I did the stitching. All the leaves, the carrots, they're all painted with thread. The little bird, likewise. So I've had a lot of fun painting with thread, and then I had fun putting the little puffy rabbit tails on. So it was nice to create that sort of 3-dimensional. I'd like with my pieces to just have that surprise, and where you can kind of go, oh, okay, there's sort of 3D elements there. And again, I've made use of laces where I'm wanting to sort of graduate between a piece, or where I might not be happy with just exactly where a piece has landed as I've sort of done the stitching down process. And just really beautiful vintage fabrics, a variety of fabrics as well. So cheesecloth, a lot of cottons. So then we go from our rabbits down to the bottom of this panel. And so this panel was for the secret garden prompt. And there's a little nest. In fact, I didn't show you the nest up here. There's another little nest with the little owl looking out on it, and it's got little golden eggs in it. And so again, got a nest here. I love making these little Aurt nests using the leftover threads. And then this was a piece where I did painting to create the wall effect on a piece of fabric that just had this sort of pattern on it that reminded me of bricks. Did so many French knots and so much stitching down here. Got a 3-dimensional vine created from twine for the garden. Got a little hummingbird up there, the little nest as I mentioned. And then we come down into the foreground where we've got my little scrappy bird, my little robin. So this one was evoking The Secret Garden, which was one of my favourite, is one of my favourite books. And then we've got a little key in here, a very rusted key from my grandpa's collection. So very precious to me. And I'll just pull it up a smidge more so you can see the bottom of the panel. And then this was just actually from a doona cover. So always, if you're up shopping, look in the doona covers and pillowcases section. You can get some really lovely, gorgeous fabrics. And then this one reminds me a bit of William Morris. It had that little bird element, which I also included further up the piece, if you can spot it up there. So I just love this panel. Love that it goes from that dark into the lighter garden and then back into the more sort of muted tones down here. So you can almost sort of see the changing of the day, the changing of the light in the garden. So I hope you like that. So let's have a look at the second one. I'll just fold this up behind me. So next up we have... Let's put the... So we've got the lighter panel. And so this one starts off with the chateau scene. And so this was the prompt where we were asked to create a vegetable garden. And when we got the prompt, I immediately thought of the amazingly ornate vegetable garden or potager at the Chateau de Villandry in France, where I'd had the chance to travel many years ago. And so I decided, yeah, that's what I want to create for my vegetable garden. And what I did with this piece was, I'll just move it up a bit more. For this piece, I did a method where you transfer a printed paper image onto fabric, and it takes on the sort of appearance of like a canvas. So it's fully flexible, like fabric, just like a sort of a thicker fabric. So it is a bit more to stitch through, a little bit more work in the process, but I had such a fun time doing, lots and lots of French knots to create the patch of sort of broccoli and the various colours of broccoli, and then we had the red cabbages, the green cabbages, we had pumpkins, because I remember seeing these giant pumpkins on display in the garden at Villandry, little strawberries in amongst the hay rows, and then little carrots, the little Paris round carrots popping up. I did some stump work. These are all bendable to either be silver beet or rhubarb. Little fruit trees, so all different types, apples, plums, some olives and some lemons, and then turnips, more little lettuces back there. And then for the water feature prompt, which came later, I turned the back beds, which I hadn't yet done work on, into some water features, some ponds, and put a fountain in here, which was already in there, but it wasn't operating as a fountain when I was there. They'd put some plants, but I made it back into a fountain, and then finished the stitching right up to the back with this lovely little sitting area that would be delightful to sit in and look out on the garden. And I had fun when I was putting the piece together of looking for ways in the elements that sat under my pieces. Like here I've got this beautiful old, I guess, placemat or mat, putting the sort of the diagonal or the corner elements so they actually flow up into the piece. So you kind of can't, well, you can definitely tell where the pieces start and end, but you're seeing little sort of reflections or little references to the piece. And I love adding these sorts of textural elements where you can see the fabric underneath, but you're just getting that interest, so it's got that layering. So then we come down, I might just put that there. So then we come down to our next piece, and again that mat really helped to transition and sort of soften the colours from the previous piece to come into these more muted colours. And this was the prompt of a greenhouse or a glass house, and I decided to create a glass house with beautiful birds and butterflies, and there's flowers and growth in there as well. So that's got beautiful beading. All the birds are fully stitched over with thread. We've got thread painted butterfly here. I left the other two as a contrast because it's kind of nice to see what you've added to the fabric as well as what the fabric had originally. And then a few of my beautiful vintage pieces of lace, or possibly antique actually for this one. And then this amazing piece of beading that is super antique, I believe, that I found just all rolled up in an op shop in regional Victoria, and it looked like nothing, but I thought, oh, that looks a little bit interesting. I'm going to take it home. And once I flattened it out, and it was actually, I'm sure the video is still there. I was doing a video showing what I'd found at the op shop. I had this piece on the table next to me there, and I just thought, as I unrolled it, I thought, oh, I'll just have a look how it goes. It's kind of the right colours, and it just fit perfectly. This was the size it was. It just was almost like it was made for the piece. It was waiting for me to come on holidays to be matched up with this, this gorgeous aviary of birds and butterflies. So, and once it was stitched down, it's just stunning. Love it. So much detail in it. So that was that prompt. And then we had a prompt at some stage for a tree that was more recently. And I decided I wanted to create the tree of life because that was particularly significant to me given some events that were happening in life at that point in time. And so, this was a really meditative process to stitch this piece, just lots of quiet, reflective time stitching, and actually just using one type of variegated thread to do the entire tree and get that amazing variation in colour, and then using a lovely, I think it's a silk, it's a second-hand or vintage thread, but it's sort of green and gold and had some variation or variegation in it, and that was all stitched on a vintage napkin or cloth, which I love working on those. And I love with this piece that you can see the the background coming through it. Likewise above, you can see the background of that piece coming through this lighter weight fabric, which is actually a synthetic fabric that I got from the Reverse Art truck, but I just love the designs on it. So I haven't often used it in my stitchery, but I thought for background pieces it would be super. Sorry, I just thought I was going to cough then. Thought I had a tickle. And then we come down to, which you would have seen in one of my recent videos when I was working down here, we've got my garden show piece. So I've got my garden show, got my house called Gardenia. That was just off a selvage of a piece of fabric. Got a lovely piece of lace, sort of transitioning between the two pieces. So this was for the prompt of pot plants. I've got my crinoline lady, this beautiful piece of beading. And I might just have to move us up a little bit more. Just go a smidge more. So the beading was from my partner's mum. She gave that to me. She's had that in her collection for a long time. These were also vintage flowers that I got from that same op shop in regional Victoria. Some really precious beads, including glass beads here. And just had a lot of fun, creating stories within the pieces. So rather than just doing sort of like a small thing, I really like creating these story-based pieces. So we've got the crinoline lady coming to look at all the gorgeous things in the flower show. Again, adding textures, so putting some tulle over the top of the pictures to just give that interest when you're looking at it. And then down the bottom, I had this gorgeous piece of embroidery that had taken on a pinky tone when it was washed and picked up some colour from something else. But it was the perfect time to use it. I'd actually wanted to incorporate it earlier on, but it was too wide for the size that I was doing my pieces. But once I had these in the wall hanging format, it was just the perfect width for it. So I've just raw edge appliqued that all around. And then I wanted to kind of echo the paving stones in the embroidery. So I then used a doily, a large sort of rectangular doily to really merge the two and then to merge up into this piece. So the sort of foreground just flows up into the piece now. So I actually unpicked part of the path so I could tuck the doily underneath. And then that comes all the way down to the bottom, where I then get this lovely little hanging edge on this piece. So I think we also had a prompt of bird bath, and I'm not sure if this is a sundial or a bird bath. That was alongside when we had the bird house prompt, but I'm going to call that a bird bath for the purpose of covering off both of those prompts. So they are my Roxy Journal of Stitchery Down the Garden Path pieces. I hope you enjoyed that little look, and if you do want to see some of the pieces in more detail, you can check out my other videos, or let me know if you want me to do a drill down into any parts of it, or talk about how I've done any of the parts of it. But thanks again to everyone that's been watching and participating and commenting and encouraging. You're what makes this whole journey really fun. So take care, everyone. Bye.